Now, barely a week ago, an explosion occurred at night following an accident involving a 30-ton gas truck near the Otedola bridge section of the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway, left 2 buildings, including a Redeemed Christian Church of God building, and 4 vehicles destroyed. The videos showed thick flames emanating from the explosion, which was confirmed by the director of the Lagos State Fire and Rescue Service, Margaret Adesheye, who also disclosed that the fire started after the truck had an accident while navigating its way. Well, joining us now on the show as we look at ways of curbing a recurrence of such an accident is Beri, a fire safety and risk management expert, a seasoned fire safety specialist, and founder of safety consultants and solutions provider SCSP. Good morning and welcome to the program.
Morning. How are you?
All right, let's get straight into it. This type of news has become almost a recurring news, to the point that most people have almost become insensitive to hearing about these types of incidents and seeing the pictures and videos from it. I'd love to know from you, from your experience with this, what are the foundational issues, the key foundational issues that have caused this to become a recurring incident that we seem to have chosen to just live with?
Okay. These are fundamental preventive measures that have been ignored to a larger extent by the regulators, i.e. the government. And also, I want to say lots of corrupt practices in the industry. For this particular instance, one thing is missing in what you said. An unregistered plate number was not even available. So who loads a tanker with that volume of explosive chemical that doesn't have a registration number? So I think that is a fundamental issue that should be looked into. I think under the petroleum industry bills and all that, they have these stringent criteria. So who is the regulator? Who is controlling? Who is overseeing that? Normally, you would have the former DPR, NUPRC, that has very clear guides. What is their part in this? So should it have happened? Absolutely no. Even the company that seems to own the truck has 13 locations, meaning they are big players in the industries. Should they not be the ones championing safety in this industry? They have a QHSE and a compliance officer in their company. So how did this happen? It's a question that needs to be pondered on, and we need to look at what the government, what the regulators are doing, and I would say what friendship and corrupt practices are doing to our community at large and to society at large.
Okay, so we've had about 24 incidents on that Otedola bridge itself. Mm-hmm. And in fact, it's so bad now, people think that it's cursed or there's a spiritual undertone or reason behind that. But we also know that there's culpability in terms of, and just what you've outlined, responsibility from those who ought to be taking responsibility in that area. What can be done to prevent, and usually when things like that happen, it involves tankers, it's usually a disaster, lives are lost, property is destroyed. Is there a peculiarity with the way the bridge itself was built to dispel these myths around, it's because there's a spiritual, maybe there are spirits around there. Is there a way the bridge was built? And should we then revisit the construction of that bridge or perhaps pay more attention to vehicles that apply that route?
Well, yes, absolutely. Normally on such a bridge with a level of frequency, you should be looking at the loading capacity of the truck. So by now, the government should have had a weighing station. If you weigh over a certain amount, you're likely to have a certain outcome, and they shouldn't even go across the bridge. So they should be looking at an alternative path for tankers of certain sizes and certain volumes. It's not to have the same thing repeat itself. Now, the escalation, when you're looking at it, comes into master plan. Look, if you look at this particular incident, you had the first fire truck that came, it ran out of water. The next one came 20 minutes after. From knowing how a fire happens, within 5 minutes, you're gone for. So why don't we build infrastructures with hydrant lines? If this is a peculiarity in this area, you must have containment to prevent escalation. Even on that bridge, you look at rescue, you look at emergency preparedness. Look, there's a reason for rest areas. There's a reason for secondary parts. Even if you have to evacuate, where do you evacuate to? So there are no, if we talk about infrastructural development long-term for sustainability, these are not imbibed in concept from the financiers. And you would then have people like the World Bank come and say it doesn't meet up to standard. There's no way such an express with that frequency should not have had a hydrant and a monitoring system to contain it. Spill containment, where do we even talk about that in this instant? So there are lots of serious gaps that needs to be looked at. I want to talk about the bigger economy, the bigger society. I want to talk about high-level strategic growth for Nigeria as a whole. That has to be imbibed into. If we fail to do that, we're going to keep talking the same thing. Now, I know as Africans, we believe in God, and we always say God will take care of it, but God also gave us wisdom. So I always say that wisdom should be measured with faith, not say there's no curse in it. It's bound to happen. The truck was not licensed, so the truck, the brakes failed. If it isn't licensed and the brakes failed, I mean, it was on the road, so it's bound to happen. I don't think there's anything mythical about this scenario. It's just what it is. And it's
brake failure? Is it? We don't hear brake failure as such in other parts of, at least in more developed parts of the world. I don't think brake failure should be seen as a normal occurrence. Because we have all these, you know, we're charged and asked to give roadworthiness and all that. Why should, because that's even another thing we need to address. The fact that unfit vehicles are allowed to ply our roads. Why should a car be, you know, a car's brake be failing so frequently?
Well, from a safety perspective, the laws are there, the guides are there. But you know, if you take a very expensive, and these are maybe hitting borderline, so I have to be a bit careful there. If you have to have a very great consultant do something, and you hand it over to people who are not trained, or people you're paying myopic for, right? You're indirectly building some gaps in the system that leads to that. So we have all these great external consultants that come in and put this book rule. Then who do you leave it up to? You leave it to somebody who is untrained 24 years and you're paying 50,000. And they're finding themselves in a position of compromise. So I think that in our general structure, we build in potential for these gaps. Yes, they are not right, but those are building from there. Then, like I said, in this case, this is a very big company, 13 branches, Abuja, Enugu, Aja, everywhere. Why is the gap there? So you have to ask yourself, then are we really implementing what we have in the book, right? And the obvious answer would be no.
We're a country that majors in minor, and like I always drum here, culture will eat strategy for breakfast. Please, I'd like to ask you this. Since all of these incidents on the Otedola Bridge have been happening, have you ever seen any class action lawsuits by people whose cars were damaged by those fires, suing the company involved and getting compensation paid?
Absolutely never.
Never?
Yes.
So as long as we have never seen any of such, can I please submit to you that you will still come here very soon or next year or anytime and talk about another fire on the Otedola Bridge?
Absolutely. I'll agree with you. In 2018, after the big incident where you lost 54 cars, there was a stakeholders forum. And one of the things that was said is that no car with unregistered license, that was one of the output. This one falls smack into that. So we talk a lot as people, and I also say people don't know their safety rights. In this one, it was very pathetic, where there's a mechanic who died. And the company was talking about taking care of the kids. And I'm thinking, see, so that's what you're offering, right? I mean, I won't call the company's name, but they're talking about they're looking at taking, and no, that's not it. In fact, you should be shut down immediately. I believe they're still operational. So the question becomes, what are we doing as people? And what we accept is what we're getting to a larger extent, you know, because this will not be anywhere else. I mean, in our country, we seem to be very comfortable with quite a few things that no one should even live with.
You know, after the incident that happened in Niger State at the beginning of the year, a lot of attention was focused on the fact that people who were around the incident ran to the truck to scoop fuel. If you remember, there was the tanker that overturned eventually led to an explosion and killed many people because they rushed to scoop fuel. And the government's response was an awareness campaign. And there were several adverts that ran during that period. Don't scoop fuel. Don't run to a car that overturns and so forth. I want to know from you, like you said, this particular company needs to be shut down. But and then what? What do you want to see happen? What are the actual steps? Is it class action? Is it us as citizens saying that, okay, we are going to take the law into our own hands and we're going to go and file a suit against these companies that are not following the rules? Or is it, what do you want to see happen?
Well, I mean, I think that there are affected parties, like the Redeemed Church. I mean, they're a big institution as well in the religious space. They should take the first call. Because if they're praying for people's safety, they should be able to act it in real terms. So I believe that that is a direct incident, that is an affected party directly right there. So we do have people like that. With respect to the government saying people should not be scooping for, look, the level of poverty calls for certain things to happen. So we see this, I mean, and we're not even alarmed that it happened. The question is, what is the government's ability to put a spill response containment on express and highways? That's the question they should be doing. If they have a spill response, immediately it happens within 5 minutes, right? You have spill response, and this thing is contained. It's not telling a hungry person, do not look for what you call food, what you see as food. Once you do that, it might likely not work. But what is the spill response and emergency response within how much time? Not leaving it for 2 days and you show up. So they must be able to put measures that call for them to take ownership of managing the response, not telling people or citizens to take ownership of the response.
All right.
Yeah, the people are secondary to the government's response.
Absolutely.
Right.
Well, thank you so much for your time with us today, Ms. Beri.
So much, yeah.
We look hopeful that we won't have to invite you again to talk about the same incident. What we preach and would always say is prevention always better than cure. So let us begin to be proactive about these things. But thanks for sharing your thoughts with us today.
Thank you very much.